Today, we are stepping into a lightless theater, into a world totally consumed by a conflict of its own making. Now, this isn't your classic story of good versus evil. Oh no, this is a true epic tragedy, a place where the very laws of physics have been turned into weapons, and where existence itself is locked in a desperate battle against its own shadow. Okay, so let's break this down. The fundamental force that governs this entire realm is called the dialectic of the abyss. But I want you to think of it less like a physics equation and more like a high-stakes philosophical argument that's become terrifyingly real. It's this inescapable deadlock between being and not being. What that means is, any attempt to build something, to assert your own existence, is automatically met by an equal and opposite force that wants to tear it all down. And this right here, this is the central curse, the very heart of the tragedy. To exist is to create the force that will unexist you. To build is to literally fuel your own destruction. It's a perfect, self-defeating trap that defines every single player on the stage, and it ensures that absolute power can never, ever truly be absolute. So who's standing right at the center of this cosmic storm? Well, let's dive into Act 1 and meet our tragic hero, the prime mover of this whole conflict, King Glaucus. He is the ultimate embodiment of will, the foundational yes that kicks this whole thing off. Philosophically speaking, King Glaucus is what you'd call the absolute I. His will, his sheer desire to be, is what creates and defines reality itself. You could say he's the thesis of this grand, terrible argument, the initial statement from which all this conflict grows. And how he got this power is just fascinating. It all started with what the source material calls a Komoda event, a radical, godlike transformation, where he ate some kind of mystical, glowing Atlantean flora. His entire atomic structure was rewritten, turning him into a living, crystalline computer on a planetary scale. He commands water in all its forms, liquid, ice, vapor, and even forged a pact with Olympus to channel divine lightning. But here's the catch, the fatal flaw in all this perfection. This rigid, crystalline order creates what the text calls a static museum of the ego. It's immensely powerful for sure, but it's brittle, and it's completely vulnerable to what comes next. Which brings us to Act 2. You see, a light as blinding as the king's has to, by the very laws of this world, cast an equally massive shadow. And that shadow, well, it was born from the very mortality he tried to cast aside. And here he is, the Mephistophelian shadow. He is the spirit who denies, the absolute no to the king's absolute yes. But he isn't just an enemy. He's described as the Anstoß, the fundamental check, the friction that the king needs to even be aware of his own existence. He's the other half of the equation, the dark reflection. And this slide just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? They're terrible, perfect symmetry. They are dialectical mirrors. You have the king's sovereign existence, and the shadow offers absolute nothingness. For crystalline order, you get necrotic flux. But the crucial part to get is that they are proportionally linked. The stronger the king becomes, the more powerful the shadow gets. It's a cosmic arms race against your own reflection. Now, the shadow's power isn't just about destruction. It's about total erasure. He wields something called hydronihilism, a substance known as burning water. Just imagine a dark plasma, this necrotic flux, that doesn't just break things, it dissolves them at a molecular level. It literally unmakes reality, erasing what he calls the stain of existence. He is final entropy personified, the inevitable cosmic void that everything returns to. But here is where it gets even more complicated. This perfect two-sided war had an unforeseen side effect. The sheer energy of their clash, the magical runoff from their eternal battle, has spawned something new, an unforeseen horror. A parasite born from all the collateral damage. And so we meet the terrifying third player in this conflict, the captain from the abyss. He's not the thesis or the antithesis. The source calls him an accident of logic, a parasitic entity born from the palingenesis energy, which is basically the magical waste product from the Titans' War. The captain's threat is completely different. As you can see, his whole deal is total dehydration. His blood is a cold, saline ichor that has stripped him of any shred of mercy. He doesn't create or erase, he just drains. He uses something called chaos water to literally rot the digital infrastructure of our modern world. And to him, all life is just water waiting to be stolen. He is a parasitic endgame, threatening to leave both the King's Order and the Shadow's Void as nothing more than dried-up husks.
All right, so now that we've met the players in this nightmare, let's look at the epilogue, the unbreakable laws that govern their fated conflict. These are the very rules of the Abyss.
So the key here is that this isn't random chaos. Oh no, it's all codified by these 3 immutable laws. First, reciprocal assertion. Light creates an equal shadow. Simple enough. Second, elemental transmutation. All that divine, perfect order is eventually swallowed up and returned to primordial chaos. And finally, the law of final entropy. The shadow's power of erasure is the ultimate limit. Nothing can grow forever. That's it. Full stop. And of course, laws like these need an enforcer. And that's where the Sea Stormer comes in. He's a sovereign guardian who uses rune magic to literally write these laws of the dead into the sea's molecular bonds, making sure the grave's victory is always inevitable.
So, is that it? Is this self-defeating, stagnant trap the only possible outcome? A world just endlessly cycling between creation, erasure, and this parasitic decay? Well, maybe not. Because new variables are finally entering the equation. Forces that operate completely outside this self-defeating system. These are the seeds of something entirely new, a potential fourfold Atlantis. And this is where a real glimmer of hope finally shows up. We see figures like Saloma, who wields Logos magic, not to dominate but to heal the captain's drought. And then there's Chloris, an earth sovereign who offers a terrestrial yes, using fertile soil to safely ground the king's destructive divine lightning. You see, their goal isn't to win the old war, it's to create a new kind of harmony, a synthesis that can bring everything together. Which brings us to the profound lesson at the very heart of this entire epic. It's the recognition of this one simple truth. Absolute power isn't an achievement, it's a destination. It is its own quiet grave. And that leaves us with this final lingering question. If the will of a god, this ultimate assertion of the self, is really just an elaborate trap, then what comes next? What can ever be truly built upon the ruins of such grand ambition? Now that's something to think about.